It's like, just calm down, folks. Just calm down. It is the Best Boys Center Ice podcast.
Oh, we know who's going to be doing a lot of talking today.
Hey, can you believe me? 2025 Stanley Cup playoff wrap-up show for Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. And as you can tell, I've got my gear out. The Edmonton Oilers are going to the Stanley Cup Final for the second year in a row after beating the Dallas Stars tonight 6-3. We will get into that in just a moment with Carson and myself. But first, want to just say the Best Boys Center Ice Podcast 2025 Stanley Cup Playoff wrap-up shows are
Catch
available.
Catch the shows. They're really good.
The shows on our YouTube channel, Best Boys Center Ice Podcast YouTube. You can also get them through on the same YouTube channel, which we'd love to get some subscriptions on the Refocused Radio Network, which you can also find Rudy Campos Jr. and Sweep the League. And that's getting close to the NBA Finals.
Yep.
I think Oklahoma City's in.
Oklahoma City's in, and the Knicks just forced Game 6 tonight against Indiana. So
it's Indiana still leading in that. So Rudy takes care of that, and Shemaya's got a great I Am Refocused Radio podcast. You can go on to his podcast site and see some of the amazing guests that he's interviewed. Yep. So you can go to get that on the Refocus Radio Network. Thanks to Carson for all the great graphics that he does. He's updated everything. So we have.
Hey, I want to start with something real quick before we go into the games, because we talked about it this morning. We wanted to talk about it. There was a bit of a misunderstanding this morning, as there were emails that were sent out to the Washington Capitals season ticket holders to renew their tickets, saying that this season was going to be Ovechkin's last season. Now, they quickly after that remarked that, saying that that hasn't been decided yet, but I truthfully believe that this is going to be his last season, because he's already stated he wants to play in Russia before he retires, and he's already up in his age. He's accomplished anything you kind of really want to accomplish in the NHL. He's won a Stanley Cup. Obviously, the biggest thing was he took Wayne Gretzky's goal record this year. I wouldn't be surprised if this is his last season, but like you said, just a great career overall. Should this be his last season, he definitely deserves a last dance type of year. Mm-hmm. And I've heard as well that rumblings that this could be Malkin's last year as well. I don't know about that, if that's true or not. But no matter what, for Ovechkin, this is a great season. If it ends up being the last one for him, he definitely deserves to go off in the sunset. He shaped the game for this generation that's about to be over with, Sid, Fleury, Ovechkin, even guys like Lundqvist and, others that really made people like of my age group that we grew up with watching the game. So it's cool to see that, and crazy to see the era is almost over, but he definitely deserves the recognition and hopefully a last dance season. Should this be his last one? However, with the competitor he is, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes a couple more, but I really think this could be it. So hats off to Ovechkin, and should this be his last season? I just wanted to get that taken care of, because I think that's pretty interesting that came out this morning.
Yeah, and both you and I have never been big Ovi fans over the years. I think in recent years, we can both appreciate the man, the player, and how he has been a part of the change. Him and Sid, really, this next generation of superstars in the NHL starts with those two guys. You can't talk about this generation of 20-year players without Sid Crosby and Alex Ovechkin. I was intrigued, of course, and like everybody else, with the goal scoring record. After he got hurt, there's a lot of people think this season that he wasn't going to do it this season, but he came back, and in a great OV style, he beat Wayne Gretzky's goal scoring record. It's just too bad that Washington couldn't get a little bit further in the playoffs, but hats off to one of the who will go down as one of the greatest of all times, Alex Ovechkin.
Oh, no doubt.
He plays whether he plays this is his last season in the NHL, and he goes off and plays in the KHL in Russia. And I don't blame him. He's been
No,
away from home for
that's
a
where his
long.
home. That's his home. That's where he's from. He wants to go
And I,
back and be
I,
around his
I
family.
even think he could do something like he could go play a couple of years in the KHL,
Oh, and then come back.
and then come back to the NHL. Maybe come back to Washington.
Or
Maybe
even like a team that's like that can win right now.
yeah,
I mean, anybody. Okay, let's put into perspective. Edmonton would be crazy if they had the opportunity not to get him,
yeah.
if they could, or like a team that, because there's no reason for him to go to a team that's not going to stand a chance. But that would be pretty cool if like he ends up coming back just to go to a team that gives him another shot to win a cup.
Hmm. Yeah,
But we'll see what happens with that. But he's definitely going to be playing in the KHL, just a matter of when,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
But
So
we wanted to take time to do that real
yeah,
quick.
we wanted when we got the news and it was kind of confusion. I said to Carson, we got to talk about this when we opened the show
Yep.
tonight. So back onto the game tonight. It was
Oh,
game
someone's
5.
smiling already.
I've been smiling for the last 20 minutes after my heart
Yeah,
was
settle
going
down.
crazy. It settled down. So game 5 of the Western Conference Finals in Dallas. The Oilers up 3-1 after in Edmonton. The Oilers, they only allowed 2 goals in that 2-game set against Dallas. And coming back to Dallas, we both thought that Dallas is going to just take it to the Oilers because they're at home. They're desperate. They don't want to lose in game 5. They want to go back to Edmonton for game 6. And they just come out and the Oilers just blitzed them
yeah.
in the first period. Scory Perry, as you like to call him, gets his 7th on the power play. Just a beautiful setup from McDavid and Draisaitl. And Scory Perry, how many goals do you think he's gotten from that spot in the front?
A lot.
Of the net, the slot. It's like, come on. So he gets his 7th, made it 1-0. And then just about 4-5 minutes later, Matthias Janmark, one of our favorites from last year too, he gets his 3rd on just a beautiful play. Yep. And Jeff Skinner, who was in the lineup tonight for I don't know if he was in for Connor Brown or for Zach Hyman, but he was in the lineup tonight. He gets his first ever playoff point because he'd been playing for years and years, 1,000 some odd games.
He deserves it. He deserves that goal, and should Edmonton win, he deserves to be on the cup. This was his first time being in the playoffs, and it was kind of not disappointing because I mean the guys they had in there deserved to be in there, but for him to wait all those years and then he plays one game and then he gets taken out to come back when you're needed the most to get to the cup final and you score a goal.
Yeah,
like that's pretty cool. That's a memory that'll hopefully they kept that puck for him because he I mean it's a great moment. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. They came out and like you said, they blitzed Dallas. Like at the same time I was at the gym at work and I was listening to my music, but they had TVs in the gym, and so that game was on. And so I would go and do my set, and then I'd look up, okay, and Perry scored. I'm like, wow, okay, well, power play. I mean, that was a big concern for Dallas, was shutting down the power play. And then I go and do my next set or two, and I look up, and one of my favorite guys on that team, Janmark, like I told you, or made that text and made the cheesy little dad joke. Jan finally made his mark as he scored, and I was like, okay, 2-0, like let's go, and we'll get into this in a minute. What happened after that, and then I do my next couple sets, look up, and Skinner scores. Well, I didn't see it. I saw the replay, but I was so late to it. I didn't know if it was Dallas or Edmonton. I just saw somebody had scored, and then I saw the scoreboard. I'm like 3-0. Wow. Like before, basically after the first commercial, it's 3-0 already, and what an awful, awful start for Dallas.
Yeah. So let's speak about what happened between after Janmark.
Oh man.
So for Janmark gets the goal, right? And all of a sudden, DeVore calls a timeout, which
isn't a surprise.
Not a surprise. You settle things out. I know you only get one timeout, but use it now.
It's early enough in the game where you can come right back and get something. It happened. You see that happen a lot where teams do that, and then within the next few minutes, they score a goal or something.
So Otter goes to the bench to have the meeting, and Otter's coming back to the net, and all of a sudden DeVore calls him back, and he calls Casey Smith out there, and both of us are just like texting back and forth, going, did they just pull Otter after, okay, 2 shots on net, 2 goals, but did they just pull one of the best goalies in the league after just giving up 2 goals and put Casey Smith in? Yeah, they did. And then just a minute later, Skinner gets his goal. So it's like, I have no idea. I will never, ever, ever, ever try to figure out why they pulled Jake Ottinger in this game. This was your do or die game.
I get it if it's like game 1 or game 2. Okay, fine. But when you're about that close to being eliminated, and not to throw shade on Casey DeSmith, I told you he's a very good backup goaltender. One of the best probably backups in the league. But you don't do that. You're a star goaltender and you pull him, and they have the opportunity to put him back in the second period to start it up, and they didn't do that. They kept him out. And you see him on the bench, he looks like he's dissociated. He's like, okay, wow, I've given my all. And he hasn't had the best series, but he's their star goaltender. And DeBoer basically gave up on him.
Yeah.
And said, you're done. You've had your chance. And really, it's not like he's had a lot of game. Like he's due for a bad game or two, no doubt. But a lot of that wasn't his fault. His team wasn't keeping up with it. And there's only so much he can do as the goaltender. Yeah. So I was not happy that they did that. I think that was crazy. I haven't seen something like that.
They even said, Jake Ottinger can't do everything. He can't go out there and score goals. He can't go out there on the power play and score goals. And if you don't get the help, and Pete DeBoer is one of the best coaches, brilliant minds in the game, and he does this, and it's like, now you got.
I think it was a panic decision.
Yeah.
That he was just in panic and let's do something. But at the same time, that makes you think that that's not a panic decision because he had the chance to put Otter back in. Yeah. Even after DeSmith had already let up a goal, and he still didn't. He's like, okay, let's go.
We were only 8 minutes into the game. Sure. How many times has Stu let in 2 or 3 goals in the first 10 minutes?
Any goalie. That's happened.
Any goalie, it happens. And I don't know. I love the Dallas Stars, and Otter is my guy. He's my goaltender. I love Otter. And I was all night just thinking, seeing him on the bench, seeing him so distraught, seeing him like his coach is just,
giving up
on him after this guy has gotten
the Stars wouldn't be where they are without him.
They would not be in the Western Conference Finals for 3 years in a row if it wasn't for Jake Ottinger. They would not be the team that is constantly a powerhouse in the West and a Stanley Cup contender.
And look at how many, legacy, not like great crazy moments he's had. I look back to a series that the Dallas Stars lost, and really the series that put Jake Ottinger on the map was in 2022 when they got beat by Calgary in the first round, and everybody remembers who won that game, which was the late Johnny Gaudreau, who scored that great overtime goal. Basically with no angle. But
here, you keep talking. I got a prop I'm going to go get, and you just keep talking about Otter for a while. Okay.
Well, he goes and gets his prop. What I remember about that game, obviously I was really upset that night because that was the year the Penguins got eliminated by the Rangers, Game 7, 2022. That was a heartbreaking game to lose Artemi Panarin's OT goal. But Dallas and Calgary playing Game 7 in Calgary, and Dallas is getting outshot by more than a 2-1 margin in this game. Going to overtime in Calgary in the Saddle Dome, a really, really rowdy building in the playoffs. And the only reason the Stars got to overtime was because of Otter. They wouldn't be there without him. And then Johnny Gaudreau, the late Johnny Gaudreau, beautiful shot to win that game in overtime to send Calgary on to the second round to play Edmonton. But Otter made, I think, what was it? He had faced 65 or 64 shots, something like that. Crazy number, and he only let in 3 goals. And that put Jake Ottinger on the map and was the start of Dallas's reign as being a dominant force in the West. And then now they make the conference finals 3 years in a row. They lose to Vegas in 2023. They lose to Edmonton twice in a row, 24-25. But as Dad and I are saying, while he's still getting his prop. You don't pull Otter.
Okay.
And what I was saying was how I remember Jake Ottinger being put on the map, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people's opinions, when Calgary had beat Dallas in Game 7. And I don't know if you watched that game, but Calgary won that. Gaudreau won that game. But Calgary outshot Dallas like 64-27 in that game, and they only
Mhm.
won 3-2 in overtime. Otter was the reason it went that far.
Yep.
And then from there on out, Otter carried them to the conference finals 3 years in a row. And you know what? I know they pulled him for a panic move, but there are a lot of guys ghosted on the Stars
Mhm.
that weren't him. Wyatt Johnston, worst plus minus differential in the playoffs, in a single playoff ever. Not shaming these guys, but it's just true.
Yeah.
Mikko Rantanen played not great at all in this series. He was pretty much, for the most part, invisible. Jamie Benn, their captain, not really there. Tyler Sagan had a great game
Mhm.
one, and that was about it. Robo found his gear getting, four. I think it was like three out of the last four out of the last five Dallas goals. Rupe Hintz finally got his goal. Granlund, pretty quiet. A lot of these guys didn't show up and they didn't give Otter help. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. And, I think this is going to be a dark turning point for Otter's relationship with the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
I
Okay. So
think.
I've said this before to you, Carson, and I've said it on our podcast for less. Even though Stu Skinner's the goaltender for my team, I think my favorite goaltender is Jake Ottinger, and this is proof of that. You see that? Okay. What Edmonton Oiler fan has not only just a Dallas Stars jersey, but who's on the back?
Otter.
Jake Ottinger. This is how much I love his play as a goaltender. Now, okay. All right. So when I was younger in minor hockey, I played goal for a couple of years.
My
I sucked,
God.
but I played. And so you
He
got to
had the
appreciate
worst GAA in
I had the
history.
worst goals against. But Jake Ottinger, I don't care if he's not an Edmonton Oiler. He's my favorite goaltender. I loved watching him play when we got to see him play live.
He's so calm, cool, and collected. You know what? Like he doesn't get rattled really. He just keeps going.
He just got shafted. It was like, remember back, this was before your time, but when Patrick Roy was playing for the Montreal
Oh yeah,
Canadiens
and he got left
and
in all
Mario
those goals against the
Tremblay,
Red Wings
it
his
was
last
like
game.
9 goals.
Yeah.
And he then and his coach Mario Tremblay, who was a former Montreal Canadian, left him in to prove a point. He comes to the bench finally after getting pulled. He goes by Tremblay, said something, then goes back down the bench and talks to the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens and says, "I've just played my last game as a Montreal Canadian," because he got disrespected so much. To me, Jake Ottinger got disrespected by Pete DeBoer and got kind of
Nope.
left out
I
to
th-
dry by the Dallas
I think
Stars.
that really wrecks his relationship with the Dallas Stars,
Yeah.
honestly, because when your team needs you the most in an elimination game, when is the last time you remember the star goaltender
Yeah.
being pulled out in an elimination game this far into the playoffs? It's very unheard of, and I would not be surprised if, maybe I'm overstepping this by a lot, but that I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Ottinger has played his last game in Dallas.
See, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what his free agency
Contract.
status is.
I'm going to look that up right
Okay, I
now.
don't know what it's, but I thought about, what I thought about that too, Carson, was I was thinking, man, does Jake want to go back to a team that treats him like this? And it's not like it's, well, okay, we've lost 3 conference finals in a row. Maybe I'm going to try to find a team that I can go and play on. Maybe in Edmonton, maybe in another team maybe in LA, maybe in Vegas, maybe just find a team that's on the rise. But no, it's not like the Dallas Stars are going to be a bad team. They're still going to be a good team next year, depending on what they do.
Mm.
But I just think, yeah, Jake, if I would be like, you know what, I'm done with y'all. Not because of you guys can't play and we're in the basement of the NHL. You just disrespected me, and nope. So we'll
I
see
mean,
what.
I think I was just floored. I mean, so Dallas has him until 2033 on contract, but they can trade that if they need to. And I mean, I would be like, I'm done. I'm out of here because I've given my all for the last few seasons. And, you I know I didn't start great in this game, but I have plenty of time left. And I got pulled out and didn't have any belief from my coach to throw me back in the
Right.
game. And you look at him on the bench, it's not like he's there and he's engaged with the team. He's sitting there and he just looks like he's staring in outer space. He's like,
Yeah.
I can't believe within the matter of minutes, I'm out of the game and I don't get to go back. And
Yeah.
it's not like Casey DeSmith did much better. He really,
No.
and it's not on him, but I'm just saying like he really didn't play that
No.
great. And
Besides the
anytime,
empty net goal, he
yeah,
gave up the rest of the goals.
yeah, and anytime Dallas got something going, Edmonton crawled back, but just a
Mhm.
horrible move by Pete DeBoer that was just really disrespectful. I don't recall seeing anything like that in a long time, and one of those impulse decisions that can haunt a
I
franchise.
I can't wait to hear what he has to say about this after, like, you'll see clips all over the internet about his post game interview and just why did you pull out? I want to hear his explanation of it
Yeah,
because it looked like it was just a, like you said, a panic move, and it was the wrong thing because I still believe, as much as I'm very happy and excited the Oilers won, moving on to the Stanley Cup Final. But if Otter stays in there, gets to be Otter-like, makes some big saves that turns the team around, that could be a different situation. We could be going back to Edmonton for Game 6. I just feel bad for Jake.
me too. I agree.
Yeah.
Horrible.
So the rest of the game, I guess we just go over real quick.
Yep.
So Robinson gets the goal to make it 3-1, and then in the second period, a power play goal. Rope Hintz, who's one of my other favorite players.
He looked good. He did well.
He did well after coming back from that illegal,
Questionable play.
questionable call by Darnell Nurse. 3-2. So we're 3-2 in the second period. 12:27 was the goal, and then all of a sudden, you know who. And it was so funny because I think it was, I can't remember for the commentator.
Ray Ferraro, as soon as the puck went out, he's like, look out.
Oh, look out,
And
here's
then,
McDavid.
yeah.
And Rope Hintz was
He got
behind
back.
him, and he got back, but not enough. Connor made a great move on DeSmith to get it to 4-2 after 2. But then again, Dallas doesn't give up. Jason Robertson gets his fourth. I think he got all 4 goals in this series, I think, right?
What? He had
Jason,
4. He had 4 of the last 5
yeah.
because he scored both in Edmonton that they had, and
So
then he scored twice tonight.
so that was 38 seconds in to the third period, and then here we go. About 2 minutes later, Evander Kane gets that. Like you said, it was just a horrible bounce for Dallas, a great bounce for Edmonton. Kaner gets his 5th, and then Kasperi Kapanen, Mr. Empty Net. He got an empty net goal that sealed it with about 11 seconds left, and the Edmonton Oilers win the game 6-3, win the series 4-1. Didn't see that being a 5-game series.
And Knobloch becomes the 6th coach to reach the Cup Final in his first 2 seasons. The last to do it, I believe, was Sully with Pittsburgh in 16-17. So pretty elite
Kind of the
list.
same scenario because Sully came in.
It's so funny
during the first part of the season.
There's so many similarities between our teams and that. The last 2 coaches to do that are ours, and then the last 2 the last 2 series in the Cup Final go back-to-back years. Last time was Pittsburgh, and this time it's Edmonton.
Yeah.
Kind of funny how that works.
So this all leads up to the rematch, and we talked about it earlier in the show, the 12th time in the history of the National Hockey League. And I mean, there was a lot of, back-to-back teams back in when there was only a 6-team league, of course. But you're talking about after the expansion in the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 12th time that 2 teams have met and do a rematch in the Stanley Cup Final. Record of that 12 is like 7-5.
7-5
for the team that won the year before. But this time it's a little different. The one big difference is the Oilers have home ice. Just because of the regular season, they had a better regular season record than Florida. So for the Oilers, all playoffs they haven't had home ice. Well, they get home ice for the Stanley Cup Finals, and it's going to be a good one. I'm Carson was right. Florida is just a juggernaut of a team. And I think what was said on the broadcast, the ESPN broadcast down here, you've got the juggernaut going through the East and you got the juggernaut going through the
Both
West.
both teams that are in the final, both were the best teams in their conference
Yeah.
as far as this went. Edmonton had their slow start against LA, but they picked it up and rolled through the rest of the playoffs. Florida, for the most part, rolled through the playoffs. They not only they struggled with Toronto, but fell back the first couple of games against the Leafs, and they came right back. And both teams that are here right now deserve to be. Uh, Obviously, great for Edmonton to have home ice to play in Rogers Place, have more games there. But if you're Florida, you're comfortable playing on the road because you
Mhm.
just won your last what will now would be 5 road
Mhm.
games
Yeah.
because they won both 5 and 7 in Toronto, and then they won all 3 games that they played in Carolina. They're very comfortable on the road. I think they definitely out of the two benefit more from the rest because they haven't had it. That could also be a story to the series should Florida start slow. But the first game for this series is until Wednesday night. So you imagine the Panthers probably don't fly to Edmonton until Sunday, maybe Monday.
Okay, maybe
I
Monday.
think you
I would think
you
Monday
I
would
think you
be.
try to squeeze out as much of the beach as you can
Yeah.
until you have to go. And for Edmonton, go right back home, and Besse and Knobloch will give them tomorrow off. You'll
Mhm.
get both teams will be right back to skating. There's not a question, but
No.
um, I really I look at this Cup final and I think honestly it's really even. And it's
Mhm.
like no team has, I feel like, a big advantage either way. The only difference can really be goaltending is just, but Stu's been money. So,
Yeah.
but like, okay, I look at this and I know I'm rambling, but this is just my analyst talk here.
Right.
Okay. Power special teams, both teams are amazing at special teams. I don't really think either team has a big edge over the other team. 5-on-5, both teams are great at 5-on-5. Forward depth is great both ways. Defensive play is great both ways. Goaltending has been great both ways. Home ice advantage is great both ways. Both teams have great fans and a great fan base. This is the first Cup final in a long while. I feel like where I look at it and I'm like, this is really even. Like really even. I don't want to discredit Edmonton last year, but I went into that series thinking Florida was a better team, and they were. Cup final 2022 or 2023 Vegas, Florida. Everybody knew Florida was outmatched, and they were. But I look at this, I really don't think there's any team in this one that has a big advantage over the other one. It's going to be a combination of grinded out hockey, but a lot of scoring. There's a
Yeah.
lot of scoring power in both of these rosters. I'm really excited. This is going to be such a great series, and one that I feel like should go at least 6 or 7 with how good both of these teams are. No team will be out of it, no matter how far away the series looks. It's going to be close the entire way.
I agree. I think 6, 7 games. We could see another classic game 7 between these two.
This is going to be one of the best Cup finals
Yeah.
in a long while. I think this will trump last year's.
Mhm.
Honestly, I know Edmonton had that historic near comeback, but there were a few games in there that weren't close. Edmonton blew Florida out 8-1 at one point. The first couple of games, Florida dominated Edmonton.
Mhm.
This is going to be like really close the entire way. I'm really excited. For your sake, I hope the Oilers win it because I want to see that. But at the same time, my little competitive side doesn't want to see your team have more cups than mine. But I
I
would be
knew it. I
really,
was
I,
waiting for that. I
I
was
would really be
waiting.
happy.
We're
You know
like we're
what?
like Shaq and Kobe. Kobe got
Yeah.
one more than Shaq.
Yeah, but I mean, I would be happy with either of these teams winning it. I mean, great storylines if Florida wins back to back. Great storyline for McDavid and Draisaitl to get their first. We'll see what it looks like, but I'm really excited. I know you have Edmonton winning it, but I think we can both agree as hockey fans, this is going to be such a great
It's
series to
going to be
watch, and it's going to
such
be
an
entertaining.
It's going to be like when each game is over, you're going to be like
Yeah,
thirsty for the next one.
I know.
So they always say over. Okay, you can't wait for the next one. And yeah, I agree, Car. I'm pulling for the Oilers
Of
because it's
course.
been since 1990 since they won a Stanley Cup, and to get back to back, and like look at Florida 3 years in a row, even though that first one against Vegas was a stinker.
But even then, that year they were the eighth seed. That
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
they
that's right.
bare they made
They
it
came from the
because
eighth
of they
seed.
made it because of Pittsburgh
Yeah,
losing to Chicago, and then they beat Boston, which was the craziest series that they won that, and they rolled through, and then unfortunately just got
yeah,
belted by Vegas. But That's something. That's a testament of your team, Paul Maurice as a coach, to make it there. They've played over 350 games just about the last 3 years, and they don't look like they've slowed down. They look like they're good. They're ready to go. They're ready to roll. They want to win the cup again. They want to be on the right side of this. And at the other end, Edmonton wants to be on the other side of it this year, where they're watching Florida go back to the dressing room, and McDavid's accepting the Conn Smythe and the Stanley Cup, which would be storybook
Oh,
if they did it in Rogers Place,
right.
because you know Edmonton had a dark decade, really, or
Mhm.
more. After they barely lost to the Canes in '06, they weren't really relevant for a while. Lots of people criticize the fact that the Oilers had so many first round, like number one picks. They had Nail Yakupov, which was a bust.
Oh,
And then
don't
they had
tell me about that guy.
Nugent Hopkins, Taylor Hall, which was a really high draft pick. I'm not sure if he was number one, but
No, I don't think he was
he was
one.
a he was a
He was
first round pick.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden they get this Ontarian boy, Connor McDavid, and then they get the German Draisaitl, and they found a chemistry. They made that a hockey city again and a team to be respected,
Mhm.
and a fan base that deserves to see their team win after all those years of just the infamous Gretzky trade. Even though the Oilers won after that, one of the I mean, I look at it as one of the worst moves of all time, even though they won a cup after that, because who trades the best player in that
Yeah.
sport? And Edmonton had that happen to them. But then they get the next coming of Gretzky, who is a really solid player and could be going down as one of the best skilled players of all
Mhm.
time. And they're that close to seeing that dynamic duo hoist the
Mhm.
cup at Rogers Place or an Amaranth Bank, but I'd hope it would be Rogers Place if they
Yeah.
win, and shut all the naysayers up and prove that the Edmonton Oilers are back. And then also it helps if they win that McDavid will lock up a contract. That's the biggest thing
Yeah.
too as well. Should they win, I imagine that'll be inked pretty quickly after
Right.
that.
So again, and then a lot of talk is going to happen about the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup.
1993 Canadians, right?
1993 Montreal Canadiens was the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. So the Oilers have a second opportunity here in a row to become that first team since 1993, first Canadian team
Yeah.
since 1993. That's a big monkey off of on the backs of the seven
Oh yeah,
teams
because
in Canada, because hockey is associated with Canadians,
yeah,
and you always see the graphic where you've got all the Stanley Cups won by American teams since then, and then all those cup not won by the Canadian teams, and now the Oilers have a pretty good
I
shot
I
at.
have a question for you.
Mhm.
Should the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, how are you going to feel afterwards? What do you think's going to happen?
Oh, it's going to be a river of emotions, because, and I know I'm a very emotional guy when it comes to my hockey team. It's going to be a river of emotions because I saw all five cup. I was
Wins, yeah.
I saw all of them win. And you think back then, well, the Oilers are just going to keep rolling. They're going to probably have five more cups in the next 10 years. And it didn't happen. And then '06 comes around kind of out of the blue for the Oilers. And they almost beat Carolina in that. And then was it 18 years before they got back to the Stanley Cup final last year? It was heartbreaking. It was phenomenal to see the team not give up. Shows the heart of
No,
this team when they were down 3-0 in the
yeah,
series and came back to a game seven and only lost 2-1. And it was only because of Bob's fantastic play that the Oilers didn't win the cup last year. So yes, I'm going to be very emotional. I'm going to be totally honest. It's going to be, if the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, that show that we do is going to be, you're going to have to take it, most of it, because because it's like
it's
it's like
35 years.
it's like when the Chicago Cubs finally won this World Series a few years ago after
Yeah.
how many decades and decades and decades of not winning. So
Well,
it's going to
yeah,
be great,
yeah.
but it's
But
going
a
to
long way
be
to go yet, though.
a long way to go. They got to get four. Florida's got to get four,
This
and
will
it's
be
just going to
very
be.
interesting now. We're going to have such a long break. You know
Mhm.
what I think we probably will do eventually? I think I'll be able to get some stuff taken care of in the next couple of days where we can do a series preview, maybe get
Mhm.
some of the advanced stats and stuff that we can look at
Yeah,
and really dig deep into this series, because this is going to be
yeah,
a really close one, and I think one that we could really dive into a little bit more to break up the break, because it's going to
yeah.
be another will be now 6 days from now until they play again.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
think we could probably
we'll
work
come out
something
with
out in the
this
next couple of
with
days.
the Stanley Cup Final preview.
Yep.
We'll kind of figure it out between the two of us,
Yep.
and we'll let everybody know. But stay tuned for that.
Congratulations to
Thank
you.
you, thank you,
Congratulations.
thank you. Right there. Hopefully, this
Yeah,
one
well,
becomes
that
true.
turns into 2025 Stanley
Yeah,
Cup champions on that
yeah.
hat. Yeah.
So thanks again, Carson. All the
Yep.
great graphics, and it's like everything is updated.
Yep.
It's just been quite the ride for us to do this
Yep.
every night, and we got at least I think 6 or 7 more games
Okay.
to
One
go.
thing I want to talk about too, I'm not sure if going back to the series that just ended, I'm pretty sure you realize, but Dallas or Edmonton scored first every game
Yep,
of the series. So that's
yep.
crazy. That
And
really,
Dallas has not scored first. I think they're in like 10 or 11
yeah,
games.
because they were down every game against the Jets,
Yep.
pretty much.
So
They need
that's
to learn how to respect their goaltender again.
yeah. But again, like we talked about it earlier in the playoffs, the Oilers weren't the fast starting team. They weren't the team that got it. They
And
were
now they
playing from
are.
behind, and now they are. And
But I liked what McDavid said in the post game with Emily Kaplan. That what's the difference between last year and this year? And he said last year he felt like there was just so much going on, so much extra noise and like exhaustion almost from all of that, because Oilers started so bad and they had to come all the way up. But he said this year, he said it's just felt really smooth and consistent,
Mhm.
like nothing crazy.
Right.
Like we're just rolling through the games and moving on. And I do look at this team and have a different feeling about them. This is the best shot that Canada has to break their curse of
Yeah.
winning or not winning. I like the way they look personally, but just something I wanted to mention. I liked what he said, honestly, in
Yeah.
that post
I
game.
think. Yeah. It was, and they touched the the Campbell Bowl. They touched it.
I don't
Did you see
believe in that
that?
whole superstition
Yeah,
there. I get
because
why they do it, but I
I
don't.
was I
I
was
don't think it
telling I
works.
was telling Beth. I said no, they won't touch it. And all of a sudden, McDavid grabs it, and I says, "Well, he must," because last year they didn't
They
touch it.
didn't
Florida didn't touch
at
the
all. They
Prince
haven't
of
touched it
Wales
at all.
trophy. So it's like there, and everybody came over and touched the bowl, and it's like, okay, so there's got to change this crazy superstition up a little bit,
It's
hopefully. But
fine. It's fine.
we got a lot of hockey at
Yep.
Carson. Over all of the 2025 Stanley Cup playoff wrap up shows are on our YouTube channel, Best Boys Center Ice Podcast YouTube, available on the Refocus Radio Network. Thanks again, Car.
You're
Great
welcome.
stuff with the graphics. And until we talk again, we'll let you know when we're going to do our Stanley Cup
Preview.
Final preview. But we'll be on for the wrap up show next Wednesday after the game, which is a 7 o'clock start here. So again, our usual
By
time,
10.
10:30, and I'm over the moon. I'm excited.
Yep.
When your team makes it to the whatever league, it makes it to the championship game. It's always special, and it's great in hockey because you get at least 6 or 7 of these things, not
Yep.
just one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap this up by saying, as I always do, because it's Carson's favorite thing to hear.
Mhm.
In the meantime,
Opposite day.
and in between time, everybody have a great hockey night.